We'd like to get started right at 3 so we can have Jon's full time here. So welcome. My name is Karen Clay. I'm the Administrative Director, part-time.
Hi, my name is Doug Krem. I'm a board member, and I serve as a practice leader, and I facilitate the young adults group.
So first of all, some basics. Take a breath. You made it. Fantastic. We're almost at full capacity here. Thank you so much to all who are here, both in person and virtually. This event is a benefit for Insight Western Mass, a meditation center in East Hampton. You'll hear a bit more from Doug as he talks about it, and also there's some information on the back of your program. The event could not have been possible without the many Sangha volunteers who put in the time to make this event happen. A special thank you to Kathy Rapetti, who is a volunteer coordinator, who amassed an amazing and wonderful groups of volunteers to greet you, to help you, to guide you, and we thank her. We also we also thank our guiding teachers. One who is here, those who are in the leadership positions at Insight have a name tag in case you want to chat with them afterwards. So we thank our guiding teachers and teacher council members. We thank our board, a shout out to board member Lucy Baroche, who went that extra mile to get us here. And the Linda B. Leon Memorial Fund. And of course, thank you to Jon Kabat-Zinn for his generosity for being here.
And can we also thank Karen, who's done an amazing amount of work to make this happen. So I'm going to read our welcome statement. IWM is committed to creating a space of belonging for all. We honor the differences among us, including those of race, class, age, ethnicity, sexual orientation, gender expression and identity, cultural and religious background, and ability. It's our intention that all feel included and respected in practicing here. IWM community agreements for all of our events include the practice of what the Buddha called wise speech. We take this to mean each of us speaking for ourselves, from our own experience, rather than making assumptions about others, observing confidentiality around anything shared, and being mindful to avoid speech that might express bias, microaggressions, or harm towards other persons or groups. In this way, we can all work together to make our Sangha reflect the fundamental Buddhist principle of non-harming.
I'd like to start with a land acknowledgement. We acknowledge that Insight Western Mass and the Edward Church are situated on Nipmuc and Pocumtuck land. Both are here today as a result of a history of settler colonization in this region and the continuing private ownership of this land. As Buddhists, it is our commitment and our practice to turn towards the truth, however painful it may be. We affirm that facing difficult truths, in this case, of the violent histories that led to our presence here today, is essential in ethical conduct and liberation itself. We are thankful to the indigenous communities of Western Mass for the work they continue to do to steward the land and honor the interconnectedness of all beings with each other and the earth itself.
So I'd like to just say a few words about our community, Insight Western Mass, and how you can get to know us better if you're newer, how you can get involved. So we really do a lot. There are a lot of offerings and a lot of points of entry into this community, and I'll just give a kind of brief overview for those of you who are interested. We have, on most Wednesdays, we have Dharma talks, often in person at our center in East Hampton. They're usually available hybrid for those who can't make it in person. Sometimes they're purely virtual online. We have Monday evening open meditation practice led by a practice leader with some discussion. There are folks who gather on Tuesday and Thursday mornings for meditation. On Saturdays at the center, we have Saturday Sangha, which is a fun, family-friendly event with kids and donuts, and it's a little wild and very fun. We offer classes, we offer retreats, we have affinity groups. There's a BIPOC group, there's a queer and trans group, there's a chronic illness and disability group, there is a 35 and under group, all kinds of groups that you can get involved with if you're interested. And yeah, there's really a lot going on. There's even more than that. I'm not going to go into all of it, but you can find more information about our offerings on our website at insightwma.org. And finally, I just want to thank all of you for coming to this benefit and for the generous contributions you've made. The number I received as of this morning is that we have raised $12,062, which is amazing. Yeah. Thank you all very much. These funds will be used to support our wonderful teachers, and with a deep bow of gratitude to all of you for your contributions so far, we hope you might consider an additional gift to support our teachers as they keep the Dharma alive and fresh and relevant to our specific time and place. So we have Dana baskets for donations available out in the entryway. We have computers for credit card donations, and you can always also send us a check. All gifts of all sizes matter. By coming together and each giving what we can, in the spirit of generosity and with a commitment to allowing the Dharma to be accessible and to flourish, we can continue to provide support for our teachers and achieve our vision of a diverse, equitable, and sustainable Sangha. So thank you all for your contributions.
Thank you. And finally, what many of you came for. So one additional thank you is for all of those who brought canned goods for the East Hampton Community Center. They are so much needed, and your goods would go to help many who are struggling and suffering right now. I'm going to introduce Peggy Gillespie, who will introduce Jon. Peggy Gillespie is a member of the Teacher Council and was the original assistant director under Jon Kabat-Zinn of the UMass Medical Center's mindfulness-based stress reduction program in Worcester, now known as UMass Memorial Medical Center. She was trained as a community Dharma leader at Spirit Rock and was a co-Buddhist advisor at Mount Holyoke for many years, along with Adi Bimek, who is with us as well today. So, Peggy.
Hey, wow, there's a lot of people in this room, and it's wonderful to see you. Thank you for coming to hear Jon and supporting Insight Western Mass. It's really, really a gift that we all appreciate at the center, and I know that you're in for a wonderful treat to hear Jon. And it's a special honor for me to introduce him because, as Karen said, I had the privilege of being the first assistant director when the program was just starting. His little experiment that he called MBSR, Mindfulness-Based Stress Reduction. And I remember thinking back then that the program that we were starting would probably last, a few months or maybe a year at most. And I told Jon, I don't know, Jon, if you remember this, I said, John, I can't imagine that there are going to be that many people that are going to want to spend 8 weeks learning mindfulness. I mean, really, it sounds kind of new age and woo-woo and weird. I mean, doctors will never recommend their patients to come to us. Well, it turns out I was wrong, a little bit off by about a few million people. And since then, as you may know, MBSR has grown into like this worldwide movement, I mean, everywhere, bringing the ancient Buddhist practice in a secular manner to hospitals, schools, prisons, workplaces, communities worldwide. And Jon, you have shown the world, really, that mindfulness is not something exotic, or that you have to go to a cave or even a retreat center to learn. Pretty much everybody, you taught us, has the capacity to bring full awareness to the present moment. It's not something, as I say, exotic. It's something that we all have that capacity to do, and to bring attention to this moment with compassion and clarity. And wow, do we all need that right now. Compassion, clarity, awareness, presence. So Jon is also the author, as you may know, of many beloved best-selling books, including Full Catastrophe Living, which apparently we're all doing right now, and Wherever You Go, There You Are. I love that title. Wherever you go, there you are. And with his wife, Mila, the beautiful book on mindful parenting called Everyday Blessings. So if you have any young kids or grandchildren, it's a great book. And in his teachings and books, Jon reminds us constantly that mindfulness is not about escaping life. It's about waking up to life. And one of his most famous lines, and I think you invented it, I don't know if I'm right, but you put it perfectly. You can't stop the waves, but you can learn to surf them. Is that right? Did you invent that? No. You said it. You kept saying it, and you put it in your books. And now I have no idea if, Jon, I didn't ever ask you if you've ever stood up on an actual surfboard. You have? Okay, I'm really impressed. But whatever, thanks to Jon, so many...
Mavericks, which was a big mistake.
You did Mavericks in Santa Cruz?
First time I was on a surfboard.
I mean, those are like 40-foot waves, right? He didn't die, but he didn't surf. Wow, that's like one of the major events of the surfing world. I know that because, of course, I was the national champion. No. But thanks to Jon, so many people around the world have learned to ride life's waves with more balance and steadiness, and to have a lot more kindness and compassion towards ourselves when we fall, or as the surfers say, face plant. We have also learned how to get back up on the board and try again. Thank you, Jon, for that. And again, get up, get up, get up. And when to go back to shore, if we happen to notice that there's a great white shark circling us. You taught us that too. We're so grateful for your generosity, Jon, in joining us this afternoon to share your wisdom and your help, and that you will help us sustain the work of Insight Western Mass. And Jon is tirelessly still spreading MBSR all over the world. Just came back from teaching a 5-day retreat at Omega with about 250 people, many of whom from all over the world, many of whom have been studying with him for a long, long time, but want to hear his words. And I said, do you have any new words that you'd say to them? And he says, it's all the same. It's like the oneness of our practice. So let's welcome Jon.
Yes, so sweet. Now let's see. Okay, I'm on, and do we have a high-pitched sound or not? Okay, good. So there's no feedback. Well, how fabulous to see you all here, and just a deep bow of welcome and also gratitude for supporting Insight Meditation West. And you heard a little bit about the kind of community that it's developing and the work that it's doing, and it's really a profound honor to be able to support it in this way. So it's very touching to just see that basically the church is full. And I've been in this church once before for a funeral. This space is actually quite remarkable, isn't it? I mean, there's this kind of sense of elevation, of kind of just things taking us upward, so to speak, but at the same time being really grounded. And so we're here to talk about mindfulness and Dharma and the sort of sorrow, in the world, the challenges of this moment. And to just say something from the beginning about that. I think this challenge is something that happens cyclically among societies, because people have such different views of things and are so much in their hermetically sealed using and theming. And in particular, this is the kind of, from a demographic point of view, this is the generation that will be the last generation of white dominance in the population of the United States. And it is, terrifying many people who want their country back, when you heard very clearly stated that it was never, a country. We stole the country, right? And then we enslaved, millions and millions of people forever to generate the economy. So history, in a sense, becomes the enemy. That different groups want to actually to control the story, because that is what supports either inclusion or dominance. And this has been going on forever, since human beings were on the planet. And it's terrifying, because it was one thing when human beings had clubs, but it's another thing when we have autonomous weapons and and robots and drones that can kill indiscriminately from a distance. And what's going on in Ukraine and Gaza also are really just testing out these weapons, so to refine them. And the people who benefit the most from war, obviously, are the people who have to make who make the weapons and then have to resupply after they're all used up. So it's like, to witness that is a moral hazard on the part of all of us, and we know that, and we've been going through it forever. So the question is how to maintain some kind of balance and stability and be the full dimensionality of what it means to be human as you are and who you are, and to actually know how to shape the world and belong in the world in ways that optimize well-being and minimize harm. And that is really something. I wonder if there's any feedback here that someone can reduce on my microphone. Probably not. But anyway, so one of the virtues of mindfulness, which has often, by the way, been spoken of as the heart of Buddhist meditation, and that's a direct quote from Nyanaponika Thera, who, I have the full quote here, and it's worth reading. Nyanaponika Thera was German. I mean, it doesn't sound too German, but he was a German Jewish monastic in Sri Lanka, who wrote a book in 1962 called The Heart of Buddhist Meditation. And in that book he said, mindfulness mindfulness is the unfailing master key for knowing the mind. The unfailing master key for knowing the mind. And obviously, if you don't know your own mind, you are a prisoner of your mind. You are a victim of, because how many of you would say that, your mind is sometimes not your best friend? Raise your hand if, let the stenographer note that everybody's raising their hand. Okay, so it's like, it's your mind, right, whoever you are, because you're not your name and you're not your age and you're not your gender identification. There's some element of mystery here, but whoever you are, it's non-trivial to actually befriend your mind. Okay? I mean, Jack Kornfield's famous for saying, there are parts of my mind I don't want to even go to. It's like going to neighborhoods in New York at night, not advisable, and I wouldn't go alone to parts of my own mind. So he says, mindfulness is, this is Nyanaponika speaking, the unfailing master key for knowing the mind and is thus the starting point. So how many of you don't meditate? Never heard of meditation? Don't want to meditate? Just raise your hands. I hope there are some people like that in the audience. Anybody? Nobody. One person. Well, this is Northampton, right? It's Northampton. Anyway, welcome to you. And it's like you're in trouble because you'll be walking out meditating, but it's not what you think. So the unfailing master key for knowing the mind and thus the starting point. And that's what meditation centers and retreat practice is about. It's like you have to have some kind of door in, a starting place, and a place that you could call home or at least feel safe enough so, as you heard from what people said and how it was framed, that you can just be yourself. And then discover that whoever you think you are, that's not who you are. And you're so much bigger than your story of me, starring me. You're so much bigger that's really what the offering is when you get your ass, if you don't mind my putting it that way, on a cushion. More on that later. And befriend yourself. And just to say in this whole operation, because Nyanaponika was a Buddhist monk, although he was a German Jew first, that the Buddha wasn't a Buddhist. So this is a very interesting tradition. And what the Buddha did was he taught something that he called the Dharma, okay, which is in the title of this talk. And Dharma, D-H-A-R-M-A, which I use with a small d, but can be used in the Buddhist framework and is with a capital D, it means lawfulness. The lawfulness of the universe. If you attach to something, you will suffer, guaranteed, first principle. If you identify as I, me, and mine, and he said, actually, all of his 40 years of teaching, or his whole lifetime of teaching, could be encapsulated in one sentence. And I like to say, on the off chance that he wasn't joking, maybe we should just memorize that sentence. And it's this, and it's really radical, especially in this era where, as you hear, we have to fight for our pronouns because they're so disregarded, that what the Buddha said 2,600 years ago is nothing is to be clung to. And the operational word or verb is clung to, clinging. Nothing is to be grasped or clung to or self-identified as I, me, and mine. So that's pretty damn radical. So even when we're talking about pronouns, and the Dalai Lama, when he was asked what his pronouns were, because he did get asked by somebody what his pronouns were, he said, we. Not bad, okay? Not bad. And it's a very, very big we. It's actually humanity, and that will be a theme of what we'll be visiting today. So mindfulness is the unfailing master key for knowing the mind and is thus the starting point. Okay? The perfect tool for shaping the mind and is thus the focal point. Okay? Drop in and just attend. And listen to this. The lofty manifestation of the achieved freedom of the mind and is thus the culminating point. Okay? So anybody who likes to use the E word or put that out like, I'm meditating to become enlightened or whatever, it's a big mistake because you're already enlightened. And besides, using that word is very dangerous because you have no idea what it means. And the more you want it, of course, the more it's a problem because the wanting is the problem. You're already who's looking for what you're looking for. And can we create a lot of stress and trouble and pain and suffering for ourselves when we ignore that? The root meaning of the word ignorance. So this is a very, very powerful practice, mindfulness. And as you heard from Peggy, somehow or other, having been trained as an MIT scientist in molecular biology, but having heard a talk at MIT when I was like a first year graduate student, so like 21 years old or 20 years old, at MIT, somehow Houston Smith was there, professor of philosophy and religion, and he brought a fellow named Philip Kaplow to MIT. And I'm walking down the long Pentagon-like corridors of MIT in 1965, and I see a sign on the wall that says, "The Three Pillars of Zen." Talk by Philip Kaplow. And by the way, I've told this story in the book that Peggy didn't mention, Coming to Our Senses, which came out 21 or 22 years ago. And the subtitle is Healing Ourselves and the World Through Mindfulness. So mindfulness is not just something to kind of like a nice therapy to make you feel better. It's not a therapy at all. And what we're talking about, whether it's explicit, as I will try to be at some point, or implicit, it's about the world. As soon as you are different, the world is entirely different. Just the way in a crystal, a crystal is like repetitive units of a particular atom, but sometimes in order to change the properties of the crystal so it has various kinds of electric properties or magnetic properties, they seed it with tiny little bits of some other atom, okay? And it's like transforms the crystal lattice structure. So we're talking about mindfulness potentially transforming the crystal lattice structure of reality, because we see much more clearly what's really going on as opposed to being lost in thought and continually preoccupied with my suffering, my story, my this, my that, my stress, my pain. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just like you're so much bigger than that, and you were born with the bigger part. And this is really radical. And it took me, let me just say, the bigger part is called awareness. Does anybody want to refute the statement that you were born with awareness? You have awareness, right? Even a newborn, everybody has awareness, okay? And it's like a superpower. Awareness is a superpower. Nobody has to get awareness. We're born with awareness. But we don't, and by the way, in my vocabulary, mindfulness and awareness are synonymous. So when you hear the word, it means pure awareness. Okay, and all the various Buddhist traditions have different nomenclature for this kind of thing, including Rigpa and the Dzogchen tradition and the Mahamudra tradition, but we're talking about pure awareness. And you already have it. So striving to get something that you already have, or even more appropriately could say you already are, is like deluded at best, right? Or ignorant. So this is a very radical approach to reality, because it says, you know what? You're already okay. In a Buddhist framework, we say, you're already the Buddha. That you have that intrinsic nature. And that intrinsic nature is awareness, and the awareness, the first thing that awareness displays for you is the interconnectedness of reality, okay? Interbeing, to use Thich Nhat Hanh's word. So that, you know, you are not separate. Reach down and touch your navel. You have a belly button? You came from someplace else, okay? And it wasn't from up there, you okay? How many of you are mothers? How many of you have given birth to babies? You know, raise your hands up high so I can see. Okay, look at that. It's like, no, that's a good thing. I mean, it's like, you know, it's a miracle. Are you kidding? It's a total miracle. It doesn't get acknowledged enough how amazing it is that we are biological creatures. And then we don't necessarily recognize that element of genius, that we have this superpower that's far bigger than thinking. How many of you sometimes are driven crazy by your thoughts? Raise your hand. Okay. All right. So if there was a cognitive therapist in the room, they'd be very busy. And mindfulness is not cognitive therapy, okay? I mean, and we try to stay as far away from cognitive therapy, because that's taking one thought and replacing it with a better thought. But we're saying, no, all thinking is suspect. I, me, and mine most of all, but all thinking is suspect. It's not that it's not useful. It's incredibly useful. I mean, we would not be here if it weren't. You can't make a church. You can't make glass. You can't make floors. You can't play the piano. Thinking is incredibly important. It's an insanely amazing thing that we've developed, and no one knows how it happened, but they think it happened maybe 200,000 years ago or 70,000. I don't remember exactly what the number is, but some kind of cognitive revolution happened in the brain of primates that were called Homo sapiens. And then they killed all the other Homo sapiens. So murder was like a deep part of our heritage, and also this capacity to whisper to each other and say, hey, you know, like if 50 of us got together and all got on one side of that mammoth and scared the hell out of it, we could maybe drive it off a cliff and have food for the winter. This capacity to tell stories that comes out of here. Yuval Noah Harari is very, very eloquent about how this kind of evolved. And I would really encourage you to read every single thing he's written. He's a very, very serious mindfulness practitioner and devotes at least 2 months a year to silent retreats where he actually hands in his devices. So you can't like make notes on your phone or, I mean, and yet he, as a historian, he's been able to actually map the entire arc of this. And the latest book, Nexus, is about information networks and how, I mean, everything we do is information. Why do you come to a talk? Well, in some sense, you want to have something happen. And it's all information. I mean, it's not, even if I shut my mouth and didn't say anything, I mean, that would be very Buddhist. People used to go, and I used to have a slide, would do medical grand rounds in various medical centers all around the world. I had a slide of the Kamakura Buddha because it's so beautiful, gigantic. And I'd tell the story, like, put that slide up, which you never do in the medical grand rounds. And, I say, people would apocryphally, I wasn't there, but people would apocryphally go up to the Buddha and say, are you a god? Because he was kind of said to be luminous, like when you're in somebody's presence and you really feel this luminosity. And he would respond, no, and then I'd click the slide on the PowerPoint so that the Buddha disappears and the slide says, I'm awake. Okay? That's what Buddhas represent. They represent wakefulness. And that wakefulness is universally distributive. Comes out of the belly button. Everybody is born with the awareness, but what we're sometimes missing is accessing it when we need it. So how many of you have had the experience like you open your mouth at just the wrong time because you weren't aware that just the wrong time, and out comes something that's like, okay. And that's because the awareness function wasn't actually taking care of you at that moment, and you were going with thinking and emotion, right? Nothing wrong with thinking and emotion, but it's a superpower too. But I can prove to you that awareness is a bigger superpower, because I would invite you to think of the biggest thought that you can possibly think. I mean, that would probably be the universe or the multiverse, right? I mean, not anything. How big do you want it? Like a sun that's like 50 million times bigger than the Earth, or the galaxy, or whatever. But you see, you can hold that image and that name of sun or galaxy in awareness. So the awareness has to be bigger because it holds thinking. It holds naming. So it's almost like trivial, obvious, but we never pay systematic attention to this superpower. So we're stuck with the thinking superpower, which is awesome, except that it's so dualistic that it's like me and you. And then relationality is non-trivial, even in love relationships, right? So we can exercise the muscle of mindfulness or pure awareness and actually remind, and I would say also with yoga, mindful yoga and so forth, rebody ourselves so that we are the full dimensionality of who we are, and not like becoming somebody in 20 years by doing all sorts of good stuff. How many of you are Smith College college students, or some college students? Raise your hands if anybody here who's a college student. We need to get the college students here, you know? This is a bunch of old people. It's interesting, actually. But so we have the potential to actually learn to live inside of awareness. Okay? We learn to live inside of awareness. And MBSR is about taking people who are basically falling through this was the idea in 1979 when I started the clinic at UMass, and it's still that way. I went around and I talked to a number of different, the head of the primary care clinic, the head of the orthopedic clinic, and the head of the pain clinic before the hospital had budget problems and got to the clinic. If you can imagine, in the anesthesiology department, and I said, what % of your patients do you feel like you actually help? I was a molecular biologist at that time, so you have to have a certain amount of chutzpah, which is a technical Buddhist term, for asking a question like that. And they would say things like, well, maybe 20%, maybe 15%. And I would say, my God, what happens to all the others? And they would say things like, well, they either get better on their own or they never get better. And so that's where MBSR was born. I said, well, do you think it would be valuable if you just sent us everybody you didn't know what to do with anymore? And we created a kind of 8-week-long course, a clinic in the form of a course that would teach people how to tap into these deep interior resources for learning about awareness and meditation and yoga, and so growing, because that's what happens when you start to learn, and then healing, because that means not curing, but coming to terms with the fact that it's like this, the actuality of things, and out of that comes transformation. That's the whole path. That's the whole path. So I said, well, And they would say things like, well, I can think of 50 people off the top of my head that I could send to something like that, and it would be really valuable. Because a lot of times, physicians under stress themselves, and they don't want to see people that they can't help. Over and over. They don't want to be confronted with, like, oh, now I'll refer you, now I'll change your medication, or now, but what about a participatory medicine? This was, remember, in 1979, now the NIH is speaking about participatory medicine. Okay, because this is an ally in the possibility of healing. Not curing, not getting younger, but coming to terms with the actuality of things, which is wisdom. And then it's a lifelong thing, because it's like, at the moment, things change, right? Change is the only constant, as they say. And that's an art form to actually live in such a way that you don't miss the only moment you're ever alive in. Because only one moment any of us are ever alive, and it's this one. But if you check a lot of that time, where's your mind in this moment? It's someplace else. Could be true even in this room. You've come to this talk, but you're thinking about what you're going to cook for dinner, or the homework you have. Oh, no college students here. Or so you get my point. So I would like this tag. I mean, I can talk like this for longer than you're going to be able to sit here. And there are an infinite number of doors into it. But what I'd like to do is actually invite you to have, to practice together. Would that be all right? And we'll just kind of like enter it in such a way. So I invite you to, and I'll sit up here, and I like to be on the sort of platform, but I'll sit up here for now. Let me just clear my throat for a moment. Invite you to adopt a posture that for you embodies wakefulness and dignity, and in some way that may not be totally obvious, but will be in some sense intuitive and in your bones, why the hell you came to this talk in the first place. There must be some very, very deep reason why you came, in addition to wanting to help the center. But why would you want to help the center? What's the relationship? What's the deep, deep motivation? The first thing the Dalai Lama ever talks about, motivation. What's the motivation? So let's actually sit, as I said, in a posture that embodies wakefulness, dignity, the kind of original impulse that brought you here in the first place. And become or move into an awareness of the body as a whole, sitting here, in whatever posture you find yourself. And it could be lying on the floor or standing, but since we're sitting, to try to sit in a posture that embodies this original wakefulness and intentionality around having come. And just noticing one of many, many things, because of course there's sounds and, all sorts of, if the eyes are open, there's light coming in and the view and feeling of the air on the skin, noticing that the body is actually drinking in the air. And all by itself, without any pushing or pulling or intervention on your part, it's actually allowing the air to exit. And seeing if you can ride on, or since Peggy brought up the surfing, surf on the waves of your own in-breath and out-breath. Again, letting the breath do you rather than you sort of playing with the breath. The breath is just an object of attention. What we're interested in is the awareness of breathing in the body. And of course, there are sounds in the environment and thoughts moving through the mind and emotions and all sorts of other things. But for now, we're just featuring the breath sensations and the sense of the body as a whole, W-H-O-L-E, sitting and breathing. And you think, well, what's the big deal? This is trivial. Well, but this is your life in this moment. So can we actually invite ourselves to rest in the awareness of the body sitting and breathing? So we're taking up residency, so to speak, in awareness itself. That's your address, that's your home. And the sensations will come and the sensations will go and sounds will be there and thoughts will, of course, flit through the mind. And maybe you'll have an emotional current or eddy or whirlpool arise and pass away. But there's a certain kind of presencing in this moment that's intentional. You've really, really, really taken your seat. And taking your seat in this way is actually taking a stand. It's taking a gigantic stand in your life because it's saying, I'm intending not to miss this moment because it's the only moment. And I don't have to work on it, improve it, do anything to it. It's perfect, as are you, just as it is, just as you are in this moment, complete. And so let this become your address for now, like your place of residency, awareness itself. And then that awareness and silence and stillness becomes synonymous. And there's no place to go, nothing to do, and no special something that you're trying secretly or not so secretly to attain, like some special state. But instead you're recognizing that the condition of this present moment is insanely special. And that is wakefulness, fully embodied in this moment, way past your name and your age and your various, CV narratives. Just you in your original beauty. That's never not here. Now, it won't take you long, whether you're brand new to meditation or you've been practicing for 50 or 60 years, to notice that the mind has a life of its own. And it doesn't matter what you tell it to do or what I'm saying, it will do whatever the hell it wants, sooner or later. And that's just part of its nature. So you will notice from time to time that within the field of awareness, the mind goes off. And you might be surfing someplace, or, having dinner in LA, or whatever it is. And then all of a sudden the awareness function tunes in and reminds you that you could be fully in the present moment and not suppress the thought or the dream or whatever it is, but actually hold it in awareness too. So it's not just the body sitting here breathing that could be the field, but the field of awareness can hold anything and everything, including thought, emotion, reverie, and also very dysphoric feelings, anxiety, or, sort of fear, anger, impatience. And then you can ask yourself a very interesting question. You can not ask, but investigate. Is the awareness of the fear or the pain frightened or in pain? So you're basically bringing awareness to awareness, or sometimes called meta-awareness, with one T. And you'll discover that the awareness is not in pain, the awareness is not anxious. Your awareness is reliably vast, stable, boundless, no center, and no periphery. And it is the most signature aspect of who you are, of your true nature, in your own unique and, dare I say, insanely beautiful, complete way. And you don't need to make a story of that. I have to use words to point this out, but you don't have to fall into any story, but just rest in the awareness, as if it's like your address. You've switched addresses to awareness in this moment. That's your dwelling place. So when you're ready, now we could actually sit like this in silence for an extended period of time. And every time the mind would wander, the instruction would be to just remind you to note first what's on your mind, which is also part of the awareness function. And then recognize that you're already back, so you're resting in awareness once again. Or you can always stabilize by coming back to a sense of the body as a whole sitting and breathing. But you can't have that sense of the body as a whole sitting and breathing without awareness. So they inter-are, so to speak, to use Thich Nhat Hanh's vocabulary, and You can enter or begin anywhere because it's one seamless whole, your life. And it's all right here in this moment, all of it. The awareness, the thinking, the emotion, the story, the pain, the challenges, the love. It's all right here, and awareness can hold it in its entirety. And not build a story around any of it if the story is too small. Because too small to contain who you truly are, because who you truly are is boundless by virtue of awareness being boundless. So you'll notice I didn't ring any bells to say, okay, now we're going to start meditating. And I'm not going to ring any bells to say, okay, now the meditation's over. Can you guess why? Because there's no end to the meditation when you understand it in this way. It's life itself. As long as you're breathing, and we used to say this even in 1979 to our patients, and they would come with every conceivable medical diagnosis you can imagine, and we would say to them, welcome, from our perspective. And we wouldn't look at the diagnosis either. We would meet the person, not be first prejudiced in one way or another by having read what the diagnosis was for the referral. We'd say, look, from our perspective, as long as you're breathing, there's more right with you than wrong with you, no matter what's wrong with you. And we're going to pour energy in the form of awareness into what's right with you, in the form of attention into what's right with you, and see what happens over 8 weeks. And what happened was, pretty significant, because it energized, as Peggy was saying, a global movement to bring meditation into medicine. And if you listen really carefully, meditation, medicine. And I didn't notice that until I read a book called Wholeness in the Implicate Order by David Bohm, who was a physicist, theoretical physicist who worked with Albert Einstein. And he wrote this incredible book in 1980 called Wholeness in the Implicate Order. And he actually pointed out that medicine and meditation have the same root meaning, medere in Latin, which means to cure. But the deep Indo-European root doesn't mean to cure, it means to measure. Uh-oh, I can't do that. You know why. The deep Indo-European root doesn't mean to cure, it means to measure, in the sense that, not in the sense of like, okay, I could take out a ruler and measure the width of this room, but that everything has its own right inward measure, or more Platonic notion that everybody has their own right inward measure. So medicine is the restoring of right inward measure using drugs and surgery and all sorts of other things when it's off, and it's like really important that we have the best possible medicine for us over the lifespan. And meditation, the direct perception of right inward measure. The direct perception of right inward measure. So it made total sense to bring medicine and meditation together, but it was kind of, the view was the Visigoths are at the gates of the citadel of Western civilization, Western science and medicine, about to destroy it. And yet that didn't happen. We didn't destroy it. And now people in medicine, medicine, it's like, of course our patients need to meditate. But the era that we started out in, it was like, who are these people? We're like, real renegade, rebels, weirdos, and yet, because of the science, we're allowed to do it, see? And there's an incredible science of mindfulness now, and I'll only say one thing about that, and then I'd like to sort of say a few more things and open it up to dialogue, okay? So if you take somebody, as has been done many times, and this is a study that they did at the University of Toronto by my colleague Zindel Siegel, who's one of the founders of mindfulness-based cognitive therapy, which I hope they wouldn't call mindfulness-based cognitive therapy because of what I said earlier, but they did. Because then it gives a sense that it's a therapy. It's therapeutic, but it's not a therapy. MBSR is not a therapy. It's a way of being. It's a transformative way of being. And the other thing is, it's a love affair. Okay, it took me many years, maybe 30 or 35 or 40, of, sitting. I usually sit on a cushion on the floor, on a zabuton, zafu, sitting for every day. I'm like very disciplined about it, and I have been for a very long time. Although getting older, I have different ideas about I might not get up at 4 in the morning every day to meditate anymore because I like staying in bed. But I've also realized, hey, you can meditate in bed, which is cool. But to get back to what I was saying, when you take your seat, how many of you actually have a daily or pretty much daily meditation practice that involves sitting meditation? Raise your hands up high so I can feel, oh, most of the people here. Okay. Well, have you realized yet, or maybe you will after this talk, but it took me 35, 40 years to, it's not one more thing I have to do in my day, which I never thought, but, what I realized is that this is a radical act of sanity. A radical act of sanity that I would no sooner give up than give up brushing my teeth. This is not like one more thing I have to squeeze into my day before I take the kids to school or something like that. It's so important, and I would wake up at 4 in the morning if the kids, they feel the energy in the room in the house when they're little. So no matter how early you wake up, the kids wake up that early. So now I just finished a retreat, a 5-day retreat with my son, who is 50 years old. So, those things happen. But and I don't have to say much. I just let him. He does it all. So when you take your seat like this, it's a radical act. It's a profound statement of intentionality. And you can let go of all the pronouns, because they all are oppressive in some way or another, except the we, because they identify and disidentify, as opposed to the profound realization that everything in the universe is interconnected. And that you are the result, you, sitting here, are the result of 13.8 billion years of the universe evolving, and has resulted in you. On the way, of course, it had to develop the periodic table of the elements. No joke. Because you're made out of hydrogen from the Big Bang, and then everything else is carbon and nitrogen and phosphorus and oxygen and, hemoglobin and, and all that stuff, all the the iron in the hemoglobin, it all comes out of exploding stars. You can't make this shit up. We are miraculous beings, and yet we want to kill each other. I've spent a lot of time in China. They're fantastic. All over the world, people are the same. Cut me, I bleed, right? Shakespeare. And yet we'll kill each other over concepts, over thoughts, over stories, make up stories. So this is, again, coming back to Yuval Harari, that, we create these stories that wind up with, they're the enemy. And we do it and now we're doing it inside the country. Left and right, fundamental dualism, are you a leftist, or are you a rightist, are you a fascist, or are you, it's like, they're diseases. Those words are diseases, and they do point to tendencies that can actually kill millions of people if we're not careful. Millions of people. And harm people, and we're seeing it play out every single day. So taking your seat in this way is not kind of sort of an escape from reality. It's an assertion. It's a kind of profound statement of a radical act of sanity that in this moment I will show up in my fullness. And my fullness is also fearless, because there's no me to worry about. And that, I'm asserting this now, you can check for yourself, but it took me a very long time to actually see it this way, that it's not, as I said, one more thing I have to do in the morning, and it's not just a radical act of sanity, but it's a radical act of love. You could say love for the Dharma, or love for the world, or love for the universe, or love for the periodic table, or just, boundless love, because love is boundless, and that's a lot like awareness. And what else do we know that's boundless? Space, the universe. And talk about the environment. I mean, this planet, we are the, you could say and I have said, in coming to our senses, we are the autoimmune disease of planet Earth. The, Homo sapiens sapiens. We're the autoimmune disease. We're the cause of, since the Industrial Revolution, of giving the planet a fever. Okay, which now we realize, so we can't say we were ignorant of it. We have realized that. So that's mindfulness. The world has realized that, and you can see it by photographing it from satellites, the glaciers are going. The water supply for maybe half the world. Okay, the glaciers are going, the polar ice caps are going. So, this is kind of like a mindfulness challenge. We apprehend the actuality of something, and then what are we called to? We're called to respond. Respond for the sake of life itself, for the sake of beings, all beings, for the sake of non-harming, for maximizing benefit worldwide and minimizing harm, and not just for humans, but for all the other animals and plant species that we are with and that we depend in ways that are so complicated, because the evolution of Earth has developed an infinite number of biocycles where we're cycling everything in the ocean, and including salinity, and including, sort of everything that falls from the sky and that moves on the Earth. And all the animals contribute to it in some way or other. It's not like, oh, we could just lose the elephants and be the same. And the elephants are really big time at risk because of this idiotic brain that we, when we just default to I, me, and mining, and we're the human, sort of Lord High Emperor, then we wind up harming other species. I mention this because Bhikkhu Analayo, I quoted from Nyanaponika Thera at the beginning. Now, Nyanaponika Thera, as I said, was like a German Jew, but he has like this really interesting Sri Lankan name, and he was a monk in Sri Lanka, and he wrote this wonderful book called The Heart of Buddhist Meditation, which was a very, very powerful learning experience for me, reading it after my own Zen practice of a number of years, and that clarified something that allowed me to bring it into medicine in a way that the Zen thing by itself would have been too far out. Different door, same room. So that's something you should take away. Lots of different doors, Dharma doors. To a first approximation, it's the same room. So as the great mindfulness teacher and yogi Bob Dylan said, don't stand in the doorway. You know. Enter the room. So taking your seat is a radical act. It's taking a stand. But sitting meditation is not what it's about. It's not about sitting. It's about wakefulness, embodied wakefulness. And the first thing you recognize when you actually drop into awareness is interconnectedness. I mentioned the belly button, but you know, that's just a cognitive kind of memory kind of function. But you just realize that, hey, where's this air come from? You're one with the planet because you're drinking in the atmosphere. And Joseph Goldstein, I once heard him give a talk, you know, where he said, you know, if you take an apple, you know how thick the atmosphere is? If the apple's the earth, you know how thick the atmosphere is? It's the skin of the apple. It's 62 miles, but compared to the earth itself, the diameter, it's the skin of an apple. And we don't have that much respect for the atmosphere, so we've polluted it to the point where, you know, we've contributed to this global warming because of our industriousness. Okay, so time to wake up and learn and modulate that. And there are forces, planetary forces, and many of them outside the United States, that are trying to actually regulate CO2 and carbon burning, I mean, especially coal, so that we move to clean energy. And then there are whole forces that think that, like, if it was the 50s, it would be a communist plot, so they can't call it a communist plot, but whatever they want to call it, that's not what it is, okay? It's just common sense. And this is to say that if you care about the planet and want to think about it and practice mindfully in this way, it turns out that Bhikkhu Analio, who lives at the Barry Center for Buddhist Studies, and is the kind of grandson, Dharma grandson of Nyanaponika Thera. He lives right in Barry, in his little kuti at the Barry Center for Buddhist Studies. And he just today or yesterday came out of a year-and-a-half-long retreat. Year-and-a-half-long retreat. And he started today, and there will be one Saturday, every Saturday in October, and then in November, he and a woman who's a colleague of mine and a law professor, Rhonda McGee, and Rebecca Henderson, who is a university professor at Harvard, and like, you know, there are very few university professors at Harvard, and she's like an economist and a business type person who wrote a book called Reimagining Capitalism. Capitalism is a serious problem, and even if we're not going to get rid of it, I think reimagining it would be a good thing. And she's a serious Dharma practitioner, sits at IMS. So the four of us are doing this thing. Rebecca and I will be doing it in every Saturday in November, and Rhonda and Analio are doing it, including today they started, every Saturday in October. So if you want to participate, go to the Barry Center for Buddhist Studies website and just sign up. Okay? So, yeah, let's, there are microphone stands here, and you know, it'd be nice if we had like 6 weeks together or something like that, because this is a very rich repast here, but you can actually overdo it and get a bellyache if you eat too much, you know, too heavy a dose at one time. So why don't we actually move into dialogue? And remember what I said, that every moment this is it in your life. I mean, it's not like, I'll go home and meditate now. No, this is the meditation. Sometimes it looks like blah, 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 and sometimes it looks like, but it's all the meditation. The good days, the bad days, everything, as long as you're willing to show up in your body and in your life. And so, what I'd like to do is invite you to line up at the microphone if you would like to either make a statement or pick up on something that I said and ask a question about it, or address like why you came in the first place, because that's a non-trivial, aside from supporting Insight Meditation West, well, there's the question, why would you want to support Insight Meditation West? Why? And don't settle for the first thing that comes into your mind, because, you know, ask it in a deep way, in a really loving way, in a curious way, because that's how we vote. That's how we change the world, is by how we use our resources and even our time to even come today and sit together in this kind of a way, in this beautiful space that's holding us in a particular way. I'm really interested in that underneath it all. Down, 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 down. Who am I and why am I here? So, there are the microphones, and if everybody's too embarrassed, I'll just have to talk for another hour, so you don't want that, so you better kind of come up. Or you know what? You know what? We did sit some. Do you want to just sit for a few more minutes before we do that? It's up to you. Raise up hands, sit in silence for a few minutes. Everybody wants to sit in silence. There we go. Okay. So I'm going to ring some imaginary bells. If you need something to say, okay, this is the beginning, but your in-breath will do fine. And just dropping in. And again, the invitation is to drop underneath the thinking that might be going on. I've said so many things that, of course, are going to provoke some kind of thinking responses and emotional responses. And the invitation is to drop, like if those were waves on the surface of the ocean, your thoughts and emotions, just drop down 20 or 30 meters below, and it's always gentle undulations and stillness. Even under tempestuous or tumultuous conditions. And just be the knowing that your awareness already is and always has been, and including not just the knowing, but the not knowing, the don't know mind element. And if I said your awareness, I apologize. So while you're sitting here, I'll recite a poem that I love, which you should just kind of let float in and out of your ears in whatever way you care to or not. And it's by Naomi Shihab Nye, who is a Palestinian-American poet. Many of you, I'm sure, know her. I'm guessing she's spoken here in Northampton at one point or another. And this poem is called Kindness. Before you know what kindness really is, you must lose things. Feel the future dissolve in a moment like salt in a weakened broth. What you held in your hand, what you counted and carefully saved. All this must go so you know how desolate the landscape can be between the regions of kindness. How you ride and ride thinking the bus will never stop. How the passengers eating chicken and maize will stare out the window forever. Before you know what kindness really is, you must travel where the campesino in the white poncho lies dead by the side of the road. You must see that this could be you. That he too was someone who traveled through the night with plans and the simple breath that kept him alive. Before you know kindness is the deepest thing inside, you must know sorrow as the other deepest thing. Dukkha. Before you know kindness is the deepest thing inside, you must know sorrow as the other deepest thing. You must wake up with sorrow. You must speak to it till your voice catches the thread of all sorrows and you see the size of the cloth. Then it is only kindness that raises his head from then it is only kindness that raises his head from the crowd of the world and says, "It is I you have been looking for," and sends you out into the day to mail letters and purchase bread. It is only kindness that raises his head from the crowd of the world and says, "It is I you have been looking for," and then goes with you everywhere, like a shadow or a friend. The Dalai Lama is also famous for having said, "My religion is kindness." Not bad. And I think that's true for all religions. Ultimately, whatever the teachings, it basically amounts to kindness. Different doors, again, different doors, same room. So, again, in the spirit, there's a seamless continuity of our moments so that the entire time that we're together, including afterwards, the break and, and the food or whatever the hell is happening afterwards, that it's like there's no end to this meditation, okay? So it could include Q&A if you, or making statements if you want to sort of proceed to the microphones and do that. So, and I would encourage you to do it because, why not? What the hell?
So why don't we take just a minute for people to say, "Excuse me," and, step on people's feet, etc., so that you can come up to the mic.
You're really backlit. You're backlit, so I'm going to come over here.
John, a question.
I noticed over the years, as technology became more prevalent, that I would be spending more and more time on computers, searching for answers, trying to feel some sense of control or mastery or, somehow be acceptable or be perfect or be okay. And it developed over the years, turned into a cell phone, an iPhone, which I didn't think I was going to get, and I got one. And I joined the masses of walking and looking at my phone. And then because of some horrible health issues, I had to give it up. Even though I trained to be an MBSR teacher, and I did that for a few years in Spanish at a community health center, which was amazing. I found that the internet was robbing me, my addiction to it was robbing me of my presence and ability to connect with myself and others. So I know for me it's been a very tough road, and a few years of a lot of 12-step meetings for internet addiction. I got rid of the iPhone, and it is like waking up again. I worry about technology that is created to be more and more addictive.
Yeah.
And what it's doing to our very young people and to all of us, because in Internet and Technology Addicts Anonymous, there are now people of all ages.
Yeah.
And
No, I just heard the inventor. I mean, I know the person who designed the iPhone, and he said publicly yesterday on the Zoom thing that his son had to go through the detox for addiction to the phone.
yeah.
The phone that his father invented. So, yeah.
So I worry about what it almost happened. For me, it was, I didn't realize it was even happening. I was getting into this world that was smaller and smaller and smaller.
Right.
And now I'm working on more and more community. But when you want to be in this path of mindfulness and you have these competing, highly sophisticated, manipulative technologies, it's very difficult.
It is very difficult. I'm so glad that's the first question, actually, and thank you for it. It is really a challenge. How many of you can relate to this, what was just said? Yeah, let me get out my phone. And take a selfie. What did I do with it? Does this relate? Can you relate? Too many things in here. Yes. This used to take up, a computer of this magnitude used to take up a space that's bigger than this church. Okay? In the 40s. And now we have supercomputers in our pockets and purses. Okay? You want to guess how many times a day people, on average, take it out to look at it? Because something must be missing or something needs to be known that's not known. So it's a kind of an assault on exactly what we're cultivating is our presence. Because we're always being called to something better that is never better. For emergencies, fabulous, okay? I mean, absolutely fabulous. But we need to kind of really learn his relationship with this. And it's a practice in and of itself. And I bow to you for both asking the question and then realizing that it had gone too far and you needed to, in some sense, re-regulate the relationship to it. I too, I mean, if you've read Jonathan Haidt's book, The Anxious Generation, what this is doing, first of all, what social media did to the world is just, I mean, it created the genocide in Burma, in Myanmar. Facebook did that, okay? Because it amplifies engagement. That's what all the algorithms, this is all algorithm driven, and now AI driven. There's no humans behind it. And the algorithms, toxically amplify engagement. And you know what engages human beings more than anything else? Screwing around with each other in one way or another. So the bad news always gets amplified, and the beauty and the goodness, there's not going to be a lot of stuff about what happened today on the internet from this. Like, nobody's going to go on social media and sort of like, and God, I would hate that anyway, but you hear what I'm saying. You hear what I'm saying? We're living in a totally alternate universe now that started with the invention of this in 2009. The iPod before, that was just like music, and you remember all those Apple ads with the person wired up and everywhere. But this is like death by infinite seduction, infinitesimal seduction. Little by little by little by little, you get colonized by the tech companies, and they've got us. And it's so lucrative that they, have to go with, sort of privileging their investors, So it's like, who knows what general AGI, artificial general intelligence is going to bring to the field, because, AI can be used for good or for ill, but the whole question and why you should read Yuval Noah Harari's latest book, Nexus, is because it gives you the entire arc of this thing to where it's going, which is, the potential for the intelligences, the artificial intelligences, to sort of like 2001, why do we need these humans anymore? Because they train themselves. They teach the next generation of machines. The machines teaching themselves. And at a certain point, maybe, see, we don't know how out of those 13.8 billion years, why am I holding my phone in my hand? After 13.8 billion years of evolution that I was talking about, and the evolution of the periodic table and chlorophyll, which has magnesium in the center of it to grab the sunlight that allows the animals to eat, and then billions of years later create the hemoglobin that has the iron at the center. Nobody knows how that evolved to, elephants and chimpanzees and humans, and to this brain that's right under, if you put your hand on the top of your head, the vault of your cranium, right underneath that is the most complex arrangement of matter in the known universe. So anybody who's depressed, get over it. You are the result of 13.8 billion years of evolution and the most complex arrangement of matter in the universe. I mean, it's like miraculous. But no one knows how that actually gave rise to sentience. No neuroscientist can tell you how you go from that to awareness. And sentience is not just, the privilege of humans. It's like throughout the animal kingdom, and, maybe down even to, at a sort of elemental level, to, bacteria and protists and so forth. So sentience is a big mystery, and many, many traditions think that the sentience actually comes first. The universe is sentient. The universe is aware. But up until now, it's all been like the universe and us animals. And maybe plants, okay, because you've got the root systems that connect with each other. And but now that we've invented machines that can actually approximate thinking, and certainly, with ChatGPT, how many of you use ChatGPT on a regular basis? Raise your hands up high. Don't be shy, it's okay. I mean, it's like, it's putting Google out of business, because it will tell you, and then AIs will oh, you want to write something? Just tell me what you want to write. I'll write it for you. That's really tempting, especially if you have a deadline. But what are we losing in the process in terms of our human agency and our not knowing where we're going, and not understanding everything, and then doing the hard work of trying to understand or letting things, as we say, come to us. And so the real question, and why you should all read Nexus, is because he relates it to the politics of the evolution of life on Earth, including incredible chapters on the control between democracies and fascist dictatorships of information networks. In a democracy, you have widespread centers that all contribute to it, and they modulate and modify each other, and they have self-correcting mechanisms, so that even when they do terrible things, sooner or later they correct that. That's what he says democracies do. Sometimes, but democracies do terrible things, and we know that. But then autocracies and fascist dictatorships, they concentrate all the information. Nobody knows anything. Everybody's afraid to say anything, because the walls have ears. Big Brother is watching you. It's pure Orwellian, you know. And that's what we're facing now every single day. We're watching this stuff unfold in front of our very eyes. And how you be in wise relationship to that, that's very, very challenging. And to not create them and us, when it's 50% of people, it's like, you know, it's happening in families. So there has to be something else. So let me just say the last thing about this, and then we'll come to the next question. This was from technology, but well, I think I'll stop with that, because the next thing is not so much about technology. Technology, and especially AGI, is really, really unstoppable. It is unstoppable. The 5 biggest companies that are doing it, and all the other millions of companies that are doing it but that you've never heard of yet, but will be the biggest companies in 5 years or 10 years. This has a life of its own. So the question is, as we get more and more digitized, how do we protect our analog genius, our analog beauty, our embodied nature? And then the fact that we are also mortal, that we are all on a one-way trip out of here. And so the moment becomes insanely precious, because, you know, they do run out. And so all the more reason to actually be fully present in this one and not get caught up in ussing and nemming, but at the same time calling a spade and standing up for justice. This is a very, very challenging karmic assignment for human beings at this moment in time. And all I can say is, well, what else is new? Of course. There's so much beauty in the world that we are all, in a sense, Buddhas. And we need to tap into that wisdom dimension. And I'll tell you, I think that's the only thing that can save us from all of this unfolding, is then we actually discover or uncover or recover the deepest meaning of the name we gave ourselves as a species, Homo sapiens sapiens, which means the species that is aware, mindfulness, and aware that it is aware, okay? Mindfulness, awareness of awareness. Not cognition and metacognition, not cognitive therapy. It's awareness. So that was a lot having to do with the, this, but this is actually an invader from some other dimension, is invading the planet, and it's taken root, and we are all, in some sense, carriers, and we need to sort of be mindful of, the average, I think, that people just check their phones 250 times a day. So why don't you check mine 250 times a day instead of... Am I in the present moment right now? That would be really valuable, and you actually don't have to pay for it. And it's a gift to the world. So, of course, that's why we're here. So we'll take you over here, and then we'll go back and forth.
Hi. Thank you for your book about kids and parenting.
Oh, thank you.
I'm finding, I didn't really know I was here today, other than I appreciated that book and what you said about I would wake up really early to do my yoga practice, and my kids would wake up really early.
Uh-huh. That resonated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just hearing you talk about this right now, there's a lot of hopelessness right now in the world, and I refuse to, I can't be a parent of 3 teenagers and allow myself to give over to that.
That's right.
So this was not what I was going to say, so I'm going off the cuff here. I had a much more cerebral, intelligent question.
Yeah, thanks for letting that go. Much better to come from the heart.
So recently when I was, they all now, 2 of them have phones, the 12-year-old does not. But I'm just watching, and I watch myself too. I'm equally guilty of it.
Yeah.
That's why I'm also modeling that. And the myth of Pandora's box came through recently, and with all the Furies being released, at the bottom of was hope and curiosity. And so I'm adding that curiosity to the hopefulness. But I find my practice is failing me, or I'm finding an aversion to this idea of mindfulness in particular, because I see so many people using it as a form of disassociation or navel gazing and not being in their bodies. And this idea of the vagus nervous system, which is the shared nervous system that we all have, we don't even give ourselves a chance to be with each other. Yeah. And I live right by IMS out in Barrie, and a number of my students are from IMS, and I notice that I'm more critical of the people that I am aligned with than the people, I kind of expect it from the other side, like, oh yeah, they're just, but I hold more of a, and so then that passion turns into like anger.
You hold them to a higher standard.
Yeah, and that passion
And of course
turns
it's your
into this,
standard, right?
Exactly, and so I know this is all back on myself, with my
I see
self-judgment
that.
and my version and all of those things. So I don't really know if I have a question other than...
Well, I think, how many people resonate with what is being said? Raise your hand. Okay, see, this is like that we are again, you know, I mean, and we're all in this together. We're in the pot of water with heat underneath, and it's slowly coming to a boil, and you know what happens to the proverbial frog when that happens. So this is a kind of the way I sometimes frame it, calling on Buckminster Fuller, who was like an amazing genius and a wonderful character. This is an all-hands-on-deck moment on Spaceship Earth, because we're going to lose the children if we're not careful, to a force that we don't even understand. And even the people who are doing this, the technology, as I said, I mean, their children are also totally vulnerable. So I guess the short answer to what I was saying is, let's not underestimate the analog. Let's not underestimate a hug. Let's not underestimate eye-to-eye contact with our children. It doesn't even have to be for long. They see you, I see you, you see me. It can happen in no time, but that cannot be digitized. That is like,
Hi, thank you so much for your work. I have all these different ideas going off, so I'm thinking about thresholds. So you're talking about the doorways to the one room, and I use mindfulness as a threshold to work with adults who care for young children, either parents or early childhood educators, as a threshold to develop our emotion processing skills and help children do the same. So I'm thinking of this kind of like back and forth. And then also thinking about the storyline, like we hear like drop the storyline, right? You know, we drop into the practice, we drop the storyline. But now we know a lot about how stories are healing, right? It's like a symbol, and humans communicate, like we just connected, like that was a very powerful story, and we used words and symbols in order to feel more connected or feel less separate from each other. So I'm wondering about stories as a threshold to that one space and the relationship between mindfulness. Then the third thing is...
Before you do that, because I don't want to forget what you're saying, so hold on to the next thought. I'm not criticizing the stories. I just think we need to remember that they're just stories, and that they're thinking, and that we can hold them as a story. And in holding it as a story, or recognizing it as a story, you're coming from this multidimensional superpower that is awareness. So that means you don't necessarily have to be imprisoned by the story, or so colored by the story that you become predictable, either to your children or to anybody else, or even to yourself. And that's kind of like a little bit of kind of a rebellious stand, but it's saying, yeah, we need to, in fact, resist and rebel to the entrainment of all of us into this kind of narrow casting of who we are. And it's trustworthy. So, and there's no one right way to do it. So it's like, oh, what did, somebody that you elevate to some pedestal, what would he say or she say? Or even Jesus, what would Jesus say? What would you say if you listened to your own deep heart? And then you discover that the Buddha, Jesus, Muhammad, all the wisdom traditions are all actually different aspects of the same one voice that we don't understand because our brains are limited in many ways. But it's really worth listening deeply to, and then trusting in your own truest nature, okay? Because not only is it insanely beautiful, but it's all we've got. It's all we've got, except for one thing. We've got us together. When we're together, when we're listening to each other, when our hearts are beating in some kind of, when we show up on the streets together to protest in No King's Day or whatever it is, if that's something you're going to be doing, you will see that, and this is happening all over the country, that people are standing up and they're going out there and showing each other and ourselves that, that there is a way to object to certain currents in society that, as I said, have been going on since the beginning of humanity, and that when they come, they bring enormous suffering with them and danger and toxicity. And we need to basically not lose our minds in this moment where we most need them, and our hearts. Does that make any sense to you?
Yeah.
Okay.
I was like, I want to hear what you say, because I had a feeling that it's so much more complex than that, right? And I think you just got into. Thank you for explaining.
It's more complex than anything that any of us can understand. So this is where, I used to, I trained for a number of years with this fantastic Korean Zen master, named Songsan Sonsanim. He was just amazing. And he would kind of imitate for his students at a certain point. You imagine us sitting on the floor cross-legged and stuff like that. But he would tell us to keep what he called don't know mind. Only he didn't speak about it as like don't know mind. And this is with, I've been criticized sometimes for imitating him, but I'm going to imitate him, and he was Korean. But I tell you, I have a kind of deep relationship with his whole tradition in Korea, and they're always trying to get me to come over there, actually, because it's interesting that his tradition called the Chogye order of Zen Buddhism, which is a gigantic thing in Korea, and they came over hundreds of monastics to New York City last year and had some giant thing at the Korean Cultural Center, and welcomed me back because I was a student of their renegade, monk who went to the United States, and no other Korean monk had done that, and created this whole, tradition in the U.S. and also in Europe. And he would, he had where these big robes and gray robes and a very bald head, and he had glasses a lot like these. And he would say things like, just keep don't know mind. But when he said don't know mind, he didn't say don't know mind like that, the way I'm saying it, because he didn't know English all that well. So he would imitate it like this for his students. And he would ask the question, this is a wonderful meditative question, what am I? Or who am I? That's like Ramana Maharshi's question, or like this is a Zen question. You ask a question, what am I? And he would imitate it. And you have to picture him in his full robes and Zen stick and everything, very imposing guy. And he would go like this. What am I? And then he'd get this quizzical look on his face, close his eyes, maybe scrunch up his mouth a little bit, as if he was like thinking. Don't know. Don't know. And he would say, you keep this don't know mind. It was an incredibly powerful teaching. You can probably find it on the internet. Incredibly powerful teaching. And then once he was on the radio, I can't help but tell this little story. Oh my God, it's almost 5 o'clock. I won't tell the story. We'll just go to the next one. Yeah. Oh my goodness. Hello.
Hi. So I was wondering about the relationship between mindfulness and processing trauma.
Yeah. Well, it's a huge topic, and basically everybody is subject to trauma, and probably all of us are carrying trauma of one kind or another. And sometimes the experts, sort of say big T trauma and little t trauma. So everybody has had little t trauma, but when we're talking about big T trauma, then even how you speak about things can, in an MBSR classroom, if you're an MBSR teacher, and you have people in there who have trauma histories, doing a body scan could be like, you don't want to do that. I mean, you don't want to go anywhere near your body because you've sort of, in order for your own survival, you've shut down that way. So to keep things short, because we're, at that point in the afternoon, let me recommend the work of a fellow named David Treleaven, who's written two magnificent books. I mean, this is very hard to thread this needle in a way that's really good and doesn't wind up falling into some kind of camp or other. But it's just unbelievably healing. David Treleaven has written two books on MBSR and trauma, and how MBSR teachers need to actually work with it. But it's valuable even for, for whoever might be a participant in an MBSR program or just a mindfulness practitioner whatsoever. His books really do something that I didn't think was actually possible, but frame it in such a way that it doesn't diminish any of the power of the mindfulness, but gives you a whole bunch of different doors into it that ordinarily, if you can't hear it in the right way, you're not going to hear it at all. And not only that, it could cause harm rather than... So the body scan itself is like a gigantic challenge for certain people, and he's framed it in a way that doesn't make it impossible, but actually makes it a kind of adventure in reclaiming that part of you that has never been touched, no matter how traumatized or what kind of trauma you've experienced. And I see that just metaphorically as trauma is like a scar. A scar on your body you can see, but the scars from most trauma you can't see. Okay, they're deep. But just like this scar, what's holding the scar is unscarred. And that's true in terms of what we've been talking about all afternoon, your original nature, unscarred, unscarable. How you reconnect with that after some kind of traumatic event or history, there are an infinite number of ways that might be possible, but everybody has to find their own, and it has to be appropriate to who they are at that particular moment in their life. And those books and the orientation that he takes towards it are really, I would say, tremendous resources. So I'll leave it at that. And okay, there's nobody at that microphone. Please don't go up to that microphone. I'm just doing it. I mean, if you want to stay another hour, I'm happy to do it. Because there's going to be something afterwards, right? At least for some people. So let's cut into that a little bit. If you have to leave, leave. But I would like to actually pull it together with a few more poems before we leave. So we'll do it kind of like that instead of.
Hi.
Hi.
It's wonderful to be here, first of all.
Turn it up a little
Yeah,
bit.
I'm
Point it up or
taller than so many
okay,
people,
we'll make
unfortunately.
it work for you. Okay, try to tilt it now towards your mouth. Oh. It's. We'll pull up the tape. That's the way to do it. Okay.
Thank you. It's wonderful to be here. My mom started learning from you when she was about my age, and I'm a student at Mount Holyoke. Hi, Peggy. And I'm a filmmaker, actually, and I'm leaving in January. I'm moving, and I'm going to Italy. And I hope the answer to it is applicable to everyone, especially those who talk about what a damaging thing social media and technology can be, especially today. And I'd like to know, you mentioned being very analog in nature with other people. I'd like to know if there's something in particular you think I can take with me to focus on as I meet people and create a film of my time away. If there's one thing that can really embody meeting other people's identities, other people's beings from a mindful approach.
I think you already know the answer to this one.
I'm not sure I do. That's why I'm here.
It's your thinking mind that's not sure, but
That's true.
I know that you know the answer to this. So I wouldn't disrespect you that much to fall into that with you. You already know in the deepest of ways, or you will in the moment, how to be. Or you will find out by blowing it.
Probably.
And we all do over and over and over again, and that's how we learn, okay? So everybody who you encounter becomes your mindfulness teacher. And you don't have to do it in the street in Italy because they'll think you're weird, but you can inwardly bow to them for showing you something, reflecting something back to you that maybe you need to learn. And so it's like, what a tremendous opportunity to go over there and do that. And the one thing that I would say is, keep up the one great work, whatever that means to you. For me, it kind of carries with it the notion, get your ass on the cushion every day. And remember, it's a love affair, not one more thing you have to fill in your day, put into your day. So you can remember that. Ass on cushion every day.
Thank you.
Okay? And that's metaphorical, but also literal. Okay, but you could use a chair. Okay.
I'm only working on the mindfulness of my lower back sitting on the computer.
Oh, okay. So that's beautiful. So let me close this with a few poems. Many of you probably have heard me recite them in the past, but just going to clear my throat for a second. These two poems, in my mind, they go together. And I say, let me just put in a plug for poetry, because the poets, what's their karmic assignment? To put into words what's impossible to put into words. And the good ones, Shakespeare, who invented half of the words in the English language, the good ones managed to do it. in all languages. So one of these poems is by an American, one is by somebody from the island of St. Lucia. The American is our own Emily Dickinson, okay, from right next door. Okay, now you have to listen very, very carefully to this poem. And it doesn't have a name. It's just, her poems are known by their first lines. The first line of this poem is, "Me from myself to banish, had I art. Impregnable my fortress unto all heart. But since myself assault me, how have I peace, except by subjugating consciousness? And since we're mutual monarch, how this be, except by abdication, me of me." Can you feel that? I'll repeat it. Pronouns. Me from myself to banish had I art. Impregnable my fortress unto all heart. You know, the story is that she was like, you know, wounded deeply, deeply, deeply in love. And so of course you want to protect yourself. Me from myself to banish had I art. Impregnable my fortress unto all heart. But since myself assault me, how have I peace except by subjugating consciousness? And since we're mutual monarch, how this be except by abdication, me of me? So you can ask yourself, how applicable is that at one point or another in your life where you abdicate yourself, where you don't recognize your own nature, your own truest, authentic, most beautiful nature, and settle for something? You hear what I'm saying? And we do it 1,000,000 times a day. So that's like the struggle, right? Awareness, of course, all of a sudden, no struggle in awareness. Awareness is free and boundless. There's no center, there's no periphery. And you can see the struggling go on, but the knowing dimension of awareness is also loving. In all Asian languages, the word for mind and heart is the same word. So when you hear the word mindfulness, you say, well, where's compassion? If you're not hearing the word heart, you're not understanding what I'm saying. So sometimes we kind of fall into languaging in such a way that we're kind of politically correct, and we have to sort of like use certain kind of language. If you don't use compassion enough, there's something wrong with you. And then there's the mindfulness people and the compassion people. Dualism, idiocy, selfing. But of course, you know, we do it. We fall into it. Here's the last poem, and then we'll stop. This is by Derek Walcott, who won the Nobel Prize, died maybe 15 years ago. Fantastic, you know, playwright and poet, very long poems. This is a short one. And he was from the island of St. Lucia in the Caribbean. And it has a name. The Emily Dickinson poem doesn't have a name, but this one is called Love After Love. How many of you know it already? A few people. The time will come when, with elation, you will greet yourself arriving at your own door, in your own mirror, and each will smile at the other's welcome and say, sit here, eat. You will love again the stranger who was yourself. Give wine, give bread, give back your heart to yourself, to the stranger who has loved you all your life, who you have ignored for another, who knows you by heart. Take down the love letters from the bookshelf, the photographs, the desperate notes. Peel your own image from the mirror. Sit Feast on your life. The time will come when with elation you will greet your... Yeah, the time will come, but when? When you're dead? Or in this moment? It's a very strong affirmation, but it's like the time will come, but, but what if we don't have any time? Then we never know. And this present moment, this is it, okay? So in some very real way, there's no joke. And of course we've got the me from myself to banish going on all the time, but the time will come, he affirms, and maybe it could be now, when you will greet yourself. See the dualism arriving at your own door, in your own mirror, and each will smile inwardly at the other's welcome and say, sit here, eat, drink in what's here. Awareness. You will love again the stranger who was yourself. Give wine, give bread, give back your heart to yourself, to the stranger who has loved you all your life, who you have ignored for another who knows you by heart. Take down the love letters from the bookshelf, the photographs, the desperate notes. What that means is the story of me, starring me. Peel your own image from the mirror, because you don't need that anymore. Sit. Feast on your life. It is a love affair. Even he knew it, and I don't think he was a meditator. I mean, there are a million different doors into this domain, okay? This is a love affair with what's deepest and best and most beautiful and most collectively shared in our humanity. And we need it now more than we needed it at the time of the Buddha, or at the time of Jesus, or at the time of anything else. We need it big time now because we've created a planet that needs us to wake up to the name we gave ourselves as a species, Homo sapiens sapiens, the species that is aware and is aware that it's aware. So I really feel your being here. I've felt deeply met and heard and seen, and I hope that our being together in this way has been valuable in one way or another, and that maybe like the bells that I didn't ring, when they come together, there's the kiss of the bells. That's instantaneous, but the sound goes on. Okay, so that we've come together for this period of time, but maybe the reverberations and the original motivation that brought you here in the first place, remember I asked about that, will really continue on just forever, for the benefit of the world. Thank you, folks.